So you always hear the question, well, if Xbox games are going to go to PC anymore, why does anyone need an Xbox, even? And the funny part of that is, I think it finally has come full circle. Pretty much most of the major PlayStation 4 slate and even some of the PlayStation 5 slate, depending on how you look at it, are either now on PC or coming to PC. The conversation in this video today is that the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 have not necessarily been the explosive generation that they were probably perceived to, be. Because simply there was, at the time of the launch of these consoles, a huge medical challenge in the entire world, shortage of chips and all of that stuff. But then at the back end of it, it doesn't necessarily seem like the, demographics of gamers who once supported these heavy big corporations are really interested in doing things the exact same way. There's a post here that I saw on Twitter. I don't necessarily know who this person is. I may have seen their post, but it really brings some things to place, and I just wanted to use it as kind of a discussion kickoff. So I think Pirate Nation, hey, shout out to you for actually outlining this stuff. Let's go ahead and look and see if there's anything here that we can talk about with how it has basically gone with the consoles. So point number one is half of the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live are still in older generations. Well, I mean, you can't expect somebody who bought a console for $400 or $500 to just throw it away. It's a piece of equipment that can still play most games that they have or have access to. And what are the games that they have and have access to? A lot of the free games, Fortnite, a lot of the multiplayer games, Call of Duty, and FIFA and sports games. These games still make additions for those consoles, and seemingly they will continue to do so, making just step-up improvements for the newer console. So basically what's happened is most of these heavy hitters in terms of heavy and big revenue bringers already would just make the exact same, spin-off with new, I would say they'll wrap it with a new wrapper, and then they'll basically launch it and say, oh, it's the 2025 version of it. And that practice continues to go on. And majority of their players, wherever they are, they go to those places and meet those players. So FIFA will get a Nintendo Switch version, and if Call of Duty could, it'd get a Nintendo Switch version too. So already you're, on Twitter here and on YouTube, our gaming interests seem to just be a little bit higher than the majority of gamers. Number two says, endless amount of remasters and remakes. Man, my dude, they've always been making remasters and remakes in every generation. This is not necessarily a point that we should sit here and cry about. Cost of making games exploding. Making games have always been expensive. They will continue to be expensive. But here's the thing, though. It's not necessarily the cost of making games. I think what it is unrealistic expectations of these companies. And I'll put the onus on both, PlayStation and Xbox. They expected that gamers will run out the door and in the middle of an entire pandemic, go start buying these consoles like crazy. Now, yes, for the most part, gamers did most of that. I went to another state to buy my PS5 because, I was like, man, I want to get me a PS5. I have a continuity in my library, but I think they overestimated how many people would eventually continue doing this, having been discouraged with scalpers and all kinds of unavailability issues. And then also people just wanting to keep more money in their pocket and looking and saying, man, this is not necessarily something that I can, that I need to live. I can live without video games. I can live without, this entertainment. And so I'm more than likely just going to chill with what it is that I already have. And so this is one of the reasons you're going to be seeing that these so-called explosion of costs are feeling more explosive because people are not necessarily buying the product because the costs were already going up. There's no doubt about that. However, if the consumers continue to buy, then, those costs can still be juxtaposed against possible profitability, but that's not really happening as fast as they would want it. Games taking half a decade to make and more development. Okay, this one I agree with you. But, that there's to a point where I say, okay, yes, there's that side, but every development firm and every development studio is different. I think what it is these games are getting bigger and bigger. Everybody wants to one-up everybody in this AAA space. So as these companies are basically spending more money to achieve more, the games are going to be growing in length and size. And, little things here and there that are costing more and more money are just going to continue to, bloat prices. But here's the thing. We need, or at least somebody in this gaming space needs to figure out a 2 to 3 year cycle of making games that seem, I would say, in my opinion, feasible to make. Now, that's a huge strategy on its own. This is not something that we want to talk about in a video like this, to be very honest. But until we can start seeing those games basically come out, in good succession, and they're able to engage their audiences, which is not necessarily easy to do anymore these days, because now there's an expectation that's been set by these companies. So it's going to be hard for them to do a roundabout. Monetization, there's always been monetization. Stop crying about that. Full games being sold at $120. There's a $69 version of a lot of these games. If you give anybody $120 for a game, then you just want to give them $120. Consoles are AMD APU. What does that have to do with anything? Microsoft and PlayStation signed up for that. AMD APUs are good. The Steam Deck's got an AMD APU. Here's what this AMD APU talk here. We've always said this. This is just basically letting you know that that's basically what you're looking for. If you want a better experience, you have options. It's a nice option to have. PlayStation Now publish on Steam. Well, yes, inevitably they had to go find another audience base because the growth was not happening. So they had to start dabbling in there. Xbox also on Steam and Game Pass. Those are good things. I mean, I can't imagine what, somebody might be complaining about on Twitter. Let's read the comments too, because this is also something that's very interesting. Someone said bloated budget. Someone said PS5 plus gaming is the way to go if you want absolutely everything. Where's your Switch? That's not everything. And don't even get me started on the kebab prices. I don't know what that means. How is AMD GPU the wrong direction? I know. That's kind of weird. AMD seems to be at a dead-end GPU market. Then you look over at NVIDIA, and AMD needs to reboot the GPS business. The GPU business person said, you have no clue what you're talking about, which is kind of true. AMD has released great GPUs, but like NVIDIA, pricing and muddied SKUs. Agreed. This person has no idea what they're talking about when it comes to GPUs. Very true. If consoles used an NVIDIA APU, they'd be even more expensive than they are now. Agreed. You'd think someone other than Nintendo will focus on games that someone might actually play. I don't even know what that means. Older generation consoles offer an experience deemed good enough by the gaming community with a large library of titles, and titles still being released on them, as developers for console games have to factor the lowest spec their software can run reasonably. This person said, I'm thinking about just getting a PC at this point, bro. If you're serious about your gaming for the most part and you want to bypass some of these things, if they're challenges to you, then you should get a PC. If these things don't bother you, then a console will probably be the way to go. Ladies and gentlemen, I read these comments and I read these concerns because I think right now, man, it's just kind of weird to see that this growth is not, moving as fast as people perceived. It seemed like things were moving into a certain direction, and then a screeching halt, a grinding halt that was so loud that you had to cover your ear as to how loud it sounded has basically now seemingly hit the gaming industry. And a lot of these things that we were saying, for the most part, at first in the last few months, they seemed crazy. Now everybody is paying very close attention. I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section. Talk to me. Peace out.